Record. All right. So we're going to go through. First of all, I want to make sure that we are, and I know you guys who are on the call may not want to necessarily share, but I want everyone just to remember to celebrate even the small wins that you have had, over the last week, couple weeks, months. I think sometimes, especially as women, we're very, or I tend to be like, what I have left to accomplish and what my goals are, but I don't often take time to celebrate the things that I have done well. So I want to just encourage each of you to make sure that you take some time to both be thankful for and celebrate what you have been able to do the last whatever the period of time is. um and I know all of you are doing really well. So um let's kind of go through. We're going to talk about deficit reverse maintenance. So those terms all kind of go in the whole macro conversation. So like if you talk to people who do macro coaching and things like that, that is the basis of kind of what they teach. My program is a little bit different, or I'd say a lot different, because we go back even a step further as far as looking at gut function and all the functional stuff. But the principle of macros when we are manipulating calorie numbers is also there, and it's helpful because that's kind of where you live long term. So at the root of things, we would ideally start with like an elimination diet to let the gut heal, because gut bacteria is responsible for a lot of cortisol balance, hormone balance, thyroid regulation, like all of it. That is the root. So I always describe your gut as think about like if you had a paper cut and you keep bending your finger and the paper cut won't heal, or the cut, whatever. It doesn't have to be a paper cut. So if you have a leaky gut or gut dysbiosis or just not optimal gut flora, and you continue to put things in, it doesn't always have to be food, it can be stressors. Um, it's like bending your finger repeatedly and it can't ever heal. So the idea with an elimination diet is that we remove the things that are aggravating it, let it heal, and then we can reintroduce those foods and they don't cause the same problems that they did before. So when we're doing things from a functional medicine standpoint, that is the base of what we typically start with. Everybody's different, and I don't tell you guys, like each of you have a different plan. But if we're looking at it from like, okay, where is the initial starting point? That ideally for most people would be an initial starting point. Not everybody has to go to that extreme. Some people, especially people who are overeating versus under eating, which is also very common, can just get macronutrients in a better balance and they see really quick results. But we're also, at the same time cleaning up things as far as, okay, less food from packages, more whole foods, and even things like think about how many steps that food had to go through to make it to you. So a lot of people, like, let's take applesauce, for example. Applesauce doesn't have many ingredients, but it has to go through quite a few steps to make it to you. It's packaged, it's in a plastic pouch or container. It's gone through several steps in a factory to make it to you. So that is not as whole of a food as if you just had an apple, like something that you could actually like grow and have yourself. So I always use that as an example, just, even aside from the number of ingredients, think about how many steps something had to go through to make it to you. And again, like I think me personally, more than most functional medicine practitioners, probably lean more of like, okay, we still have to live life. We need some convenience items. Do I think it's the end of the world if you eat applesauce from a pouch? Absolutely not. But, just, think about, kind of try to have that in your brain. So after an elimination diet and you have reintroduced foods, or even if you are not going straight to an elimination diet, you would do, if you were typically an overeater, you would be in a calorie deficit. So this is a number that I calculate for each one of you, depending on your activity level, your age, your height, your weight, your goal. And different medical conditions respond better to different ratios of macronutrients. You guys do not need to worry about that. I do all of that for you. But just so I want you guys to be, to have information and be educated about where this, the thought processes come from. Things like PCOS, menopause respond better to different ratios of carbs and fat than somebody who is not dealing with those things. So a deficit is when you're on a diet. So this is typically what people, they're like, okay, I'm going to start a diet. I'm going to eat better. I'm going to, typically, historically, it's been all counting calories. This is the hardest part. So when I talk about things being sustainable and you being able to travel and go out to eat and still, stay on track and feel confident, not that you hit numbers, every single day. But that's the hardest part. And I think sometimes we come into that and we think, oh my gosh, I have to be on a diet until I reach my goal weight. And that is not the way that it works best. And I really strongly feel that that's why a lot of Americans have kind of gotten on this whole yo-yo cycle. So with a calorie deficit, if you are diligent 90% of the time, then we really don't want that deficit to last more than 12 weeks because your metabolism will adapt to that calorie level. So this is where chronic undereating comes in, okay? There are a lot of people who undereat, they don't eat enough, and it really kills your metabolism, okay? So when you start a diet, your body naturally stops doing things like fidgeting, just little subtle movements that you wouldn't even necessarily pay attention to conserve energy. It's a protective, like, human mechanism. Thinking about years and years ago from a food scarcity standpoint, your metabolism adapts to the calories that you're consuming. So if you stay on a diet too long, if you stay in a calorie deficit too long, or if you chronically undereat, you do damage to your metabolism. So the best approach is to do 12 weeks of a deficit, and then we do a reverse diet. And a reverse diet is exactly what it sounds like, the opposite, the reverse of a diet. We add calories back in strategically. And let me just kind of go through what that looks like. So when we do a reverse diet, we add in 100 calories at a time every 3 to 5 days. It really depends on the person and the situation. We add in 100 calories at a time every 3 to 5 days. Your protein goal stays the same that it's been the whole time. And we only increase the carbs and the fat. So we split the grams of carbs and the grams of fat with that 100 calories. Amanda, you're getting ready to start a reverse diet. So I am going to break it down even more because I want you specifically to have this information. And Gay, you're going to be getting to that point soon. I'll talk about that in just a second. When we take 100 calories, there are 4 calories per gram of carbs and 9 for fat. So actually, that sounds confusing. Just erase that from your mind. When we add in 100 calories, we do 12 grams of carbs and 5 grams of fat if we're splitting it evenly. So every 3 to 5 days, I'm going to say, okay, it's time to step up again. You're going to add 12 grams of carbs, 5 grams of fat. Okay. As we go, that's why some people try to cut it short and do this on their own. And I'm not saying it can't ever be done, but it is so helpful to do it together because there comes a point when we would either only add carbs or only add fat and, that sort of thing. But during this time, you have to be tracking diligently. I want you to hit your protein goal as much as possible because if that starts to fall, the ratios are going to be out of whack again, okay? And you weigh every day. And when you enter your weight, that's kind of my trigger to say, okay, your weight's steady, we're going to go up. And most people will actually continue to lose when we first start this process. And their mind is blown because they're like, oh my gosh, I've increased by 300 calories. Why am I still losing weight? And it's really your metabolism turns on. You're like, okay, like now I've really got some fuel. I can go for longer walks. I can push harder in my workouts. I'm sleeping better, all those sorts of things, all those biofeedback things, really, you feel good. I mean, you'll feel a difference. So when your weight goes up more than 2 to 3 pounds, that's where we will stop, at least for a period of time. And that's kind of where we say you have reached your maintenance. So I can do a calculation and say, like, this is where I would estimate that your maintenance would be around. But really, if we do walk through the reverse diet together, we will find your true maintenance together. And when you get to maintenance, that is really where you have freedom. You don't have to track every day. Maybe you're tracking, maybe you go from tracking, most days to like 2 or 3 days a week. Maybe you go several weeks, like once you've got that down pat, where you just check in occasionally with a day of tracking just to kind of see where you are. But that, for most people are going to be at least at 2,000 calories a day. And obviously, it's easier to eat out. It's easier to travel and do things on the weekends and that sort of thing when your goal is 2,000 calories a day and you have a lot more carbs and fat. So as long as you continue to prioritize protein, check in occasionally with tracking, that really sets you up for long-term life success. Okay, so that's where we get off the yo-yo thing. Now, say someone comes in and they don't lose all the weight that they want to lose in 12 weeks. We do a reverse diet to maintenance, and you stay at maintenance for 8 to 12 weeks. And then we do another calorie deficit. We let your metabolism recover. Around 12 weeks is typically where people would be getting really kind of diet fatigue, like the newness is worn off, you're not as into it, you're having more trouble staying on track. That's just normal parts of being in a calorie deficit. That's kind of your internal biofeedback saying, like, hey, I need more. You're asking me to do too much and you're not giving me enough fuel. So I have a lot of clients who we've done a deficit. They lost, maybe half the weight they wanted to lose. We do a reverse to maintenance, and then we do another deficit. And when we do it in that pattern, it sets you up for being able to keep the weight off, learn those eating behaviors and eating intuitively, and not gain and lose the same 5 pounds, like back and forth. That becomes a lot of kind of situation that people are in. I did want to say that there's not really anything magic to 12 weeks. It's just from the literature, that is about the time, if you're in a true deficit consistently, that you will kind of fatigue and your metabolism will start to decrease. But if you have made progress, but you've had plenty of days where you have not, maybe you've overeaten, gone over on your calories, it's not like all of a sudden at week 12, we need to change anything. If your body's still responding, and if you have not been diligent 90% of the time, we have more time after that 12 weeks to still get some things done. But I do think that it helps from a mindset standpoint to say, okay, I'm going to buckle down and get this done in the next 12 weeks. Some people, a lot of times, from a mindset standpoint, which is so important with all of this, is I'm going to have to eat 1,500 calories forever. Like, I'm never going to be able to have a cupcake at the birthday party or a piece of pizza, that mentality will not get you anywhere. So you need to look at it from like okay, I'm buckling down for 12 weeks. I'm going to lose as much of this weight as I can lose. Then I'm going to be at maintenance for a little while and really take a break, live life. And when I say live life, I'm not saying like go off the rails, but you'll be really encouraged if you do it correctly, how much you can eat and still maintain. And then buckle down and do another round of the calorie deficit. But that sets you up for getting to your goal weight much quicker than if you stay on this never ending diet sort of mentality. Um, I have a client specifically right now. I have shared, she's given me permission to share her pictures on social media. And we started working together at the beginning of the year. She lost quite a bit of weight. Um, her goal was between 14 and 1500 calories. And she's up to 2200 calories. And we could actually go further, but she's like, I just physically can't eat more food. And she has not gained a pound. In fact, she like kept losing. So when you handle a metabolic standpoint and like metabolism correctly, your mind will be blown at what that could look like. But most people never get to that point. So I wanted to kind of lay out what those steps were because there are a lot of you who are going to be coming into that reverse diet state and just again um, refresh from a mindset standpoint that you're not going to be eating 1400 calories forever. Um, so if you're an undereater, those numbers sound like, oh my gosh, there is no way I could ever eat 2200 calories a day. And that may be true, but from an undereating standpoint, when an undereater tells me that they're hungry, and they're starting to feel hungry, that's always a good sign. So when we get the nutrients in, we prioritize protein, we heal the gut, we remind your body that yes, food is not scarce. We are going to take time to eat and take care of ourselves. You'll find that your appetite does increase over time, and we just kind of will see where you end up falling. So don't let that overwhelm you. Um, but if you are a chronic undereater, those hunger cues and feeling hungry and being able to eat more is a really good sign. Are there any questions about that? I think I touched on everything that I wanted to. I would just say from a maintenance standpoint, I mean, I want you to, Rita's here. I want you to lost my train of thought. Don't know what I was saying. Hi, Frida. How are you? You don't have to respond. I was going through my um spiel, but you will want to re-listen to everything that I just went through. There you
Okay. Hey,
Hey, how are you?
well, I was thinking for my time. I'm
Well, I
sorry.
wondered when you came in, I was like, I wonder if she thought it was Central Time, but yeah, that's okay.
Glad to be here.
Yes. So what I want to tell you just quickly, and I'm going to post this recording in the Facebook group so you can
Right.
listen to it. I'm not going to go back.
Oh,
They
no,
listen
of
to me
course
say
not.
all this again. But from a mindset standpoint, understand, because I know you were saying this doesn't necessarily apply to you right now because we're going to start with an elimination diet. That's the basis that we're setting the root of, and then but you'll want to listen to this because from a mindset standpoint and from like a chronic dieting yo-yo situation, the deficit reverse maintenance is what most people don't understand, and they don't go through those steps appropriately, and it's just this lifelong, I'm on a diet or I'm off a diet, back and forth. And that's what we don't want. So the way we will approach this, and if it sounds like, oh my gosh, this is confusing, that's my job, is to do this for you. So you don't have to know how to do this. I had several people asking me questions about like, okay, when you're saying all this and you're telling me to do these different things, what does it mean and why am I doing it? And this is why. So when you start a diet, we're looking at it 12 weeks at a time. You buckle down, you get as much of the weight off in 12 weeks, and then we move to the next step, which is eating around 2000 calories like normal. Um, and when you do it the right way, I mean, a lot of people, like when we start a reverse diet, they are scared. They're like, there's no way we can start increasing calories and I'm not going to gain weight. But I have not had a time that it hasn't worked. So you just have to trust me. Um, and a lot of you guys are not there yet, but when you are, and I just think that the mindset standpoint of knowing that you're not going to be on a diet for forever. Okay. even you're not even going to be on a diet until you lose the amount of weight you want to lose. We're going to take a break, and really kind of viewing it like that instead of just ongoing sort of thing. Um, do you have any specific questions or anything about the elimination diet that you have questions about,
Um,
Betty?
well, probably I think I am a little overwhelmed because that's been my problem, is deciding what to eat, period. And so whether it's elimination or just changing my diet to a more healthy lifestyle and diet, it's not even about the food, it's the other things and pointers and tips that you gave as far as um, calming down and the addiction and those bad habits to
Sure.
overcome.
Yeah.
So it's jumping right in to anything for
Yes.
me is challenging, to get rid
Well,
of
and
all that.
I mean, anytime anybody starts something new, whatever it has to do with, it's
Sure.
overwhelming.
Mhm.
And that's normal. Just know that
Yeah.
that's normal. And it doesn't have to be perfect. So I think
Yeah.
as
Mhm.
females, and especially like, if you have more of like a perfectionist
Mhm.
personality and it's more of like everything's got to be, all the ducks have to be in a row or I'm not starting at all. If we have that mentality, you just will never make progress. Okay. And I'm like that. So I say that from experience. I mean, even from like a business perspective,
Yeah.
and it's taught me a lot because I feel like everything has to be exactly how it is going to be long term and look pretty and all these things, or I can't start at all. My website has to be perfect or I can't help anybody. Okay.
Mhm.
But I would just encourage you to take messy action. I don't care how messy it is. I don't care if it's one tiny little change in your day. Maybe it's what you put in your coffee or, you know, whatever it is, drinking more water. One of the best ways to reduce some of that overwhelm is to just start taking some small actions. Okay. And
Yeah.
once that becomes more routine, it's easier to kind of wrap your mind around.
Sure. Mhm.
So, maybe I would encourage you, like, maybe just look at it like 1 week at a time and maybe one meal at a time. Okay. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pick 2 breakfast options and I'm going to put that in rotation this week. And next week I'll work on lunch. This is not a race. Okay. It's not like a who gets to the finish line and who, I mean, there is no race in this. It's really figuring out what small steps you can take to get to climb up the ladder. And small steps are better than trying to take a huge step and never taking that step. And I don't know if any of you, Christy, Amanda, Gay, any of you who are on here have any, I mean, because you guys have been doing this for a little while. Do you have any? Because sometimes I feel like I have to like intentionally put myself back in that mindset to, as far as the overwhelm, but do you have anything that you would say as far as getting past some of the overwhelm?
Do I have any advice, I guess, is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Like, um, I mean, I think that as time goes on, it does become more habit, and it's, like logging food, for instance, was a little bit challenging at first, but then as time goes on, it doesn't seem as daunting, I guess.
Yeah, I
Um,
always feel like, as far as what to eat, I like to break it down and say pick 2 breakfast options and write them down. We cannot have things like floating around in our heads. Our heads are too full. So 2 breakfast options that you just put in rotation. And I mean, a lot of people do like a lot of food variety, which is fine, but at least for the first week or two, let's not try to have like a different meal every single meal. Let's put some basics just in rotation until you kind of get in the swing of things and then you can add more variety. Um So like from an elimination standpoint, again, like it doesn't have to be perfect. But if you could just choose two, the cookbooks on there, and then you and I can brainstorm what are two just good breakfast things to put in rotation. I always say a protein shake is a great one because it's easy. We can get a lot of nutrients in there, lots of protein. It'll keep you full. And then we could do like a coconut milk, Siggy's coconut milk yogurt. Um, it has protein, it's not dairy. So from an elimination standpoint, that would be a good option. But I can give you some things like that we could just kind of pick and put in rotation.
I was just gonna say that, I mean, like, I'm pretty much at 12 weeks, and Mary Elizabeth has watched my meals. Like, I've pretty much eaten the same thing, same 2 to 3 meals. And actually, I'm like, oh, what different can I eat this week? Trying to look for a recipe because I've just been eating the same thing. But it does make it, if you find those high protein things that you like and you can stand to eat a lot, it does make it a lot simpler. And because you want to plan, if you don't plan, then if you try to go off the cuff, then you're not gonna be successful. So to have those, few meals that you just rotate makes it very easy and sustainable, I think.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, it's a short period of time. The big scheme of things, it's like a blip on the radar as far as there'll be plenty of times in your life that we can have lots of variety, but for a short period of time, we won't have as much. Yes. Yeah. But just know that it's okay to be overwhelmed. That's fine. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Does that help at all? Okay. Well, uh-huh. Yes.
The yogurt you mentioned, I'm not having any luck finding that. Coconut
Okay.
milk, even at Trader Joe's, I thought surely they would have it. But
Okay.
did you tell the brand? What is the brand you
Siggy,
said?
I'll type it right here in the chat. Siggy's.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of another one. I'm gonna put a couple things. Can you see the chat, Frida?
I have it now. Let's see. It's up there. Whoops. Oh dear. Let me see. Oh, when I start fooling around with that, then
I'm gonna
let me
send
pull
another
you back.
message and see if it comes through. This is
Okay.
another option as far as something you could have for breakfast on elimination diet.
Oh, I see it now. Okay.
Okay. So Siggy's chicken sausage.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm trying to see. Let's see. I mean, honestly, do you feel like well, I don't want to talk too much about like your stuff on this call, but
I don't mind.
okay.
I
Well, let me
mean,
stop recording because I've already been over all